This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
We are talking again today all about estate planning and so much more. And maybe you need a will. Maybe you know someone who needs a will. Maybe you're dealing with an issue and you're trying to figure out whose trust. How do I do this? What documents do I need? Well, we are joined by our amazing professional and estate attorney. Once again, Julie A. Schejbal. Thank you so much for being here. How are you?
I am great, Jill. How about yourself?
I'm doing fantastic. Beautiful day in New York. You're in, is it
I'm
Maryland?
in Maryland and it's a beautiful day down here too. So it's great. The sun's shining. It's getting warmer. It's fabulous.
Well, it's amazing. I love this weather, great time of year, and in your practice, there's a lot going on for you, I'm sure. So first, tell us just a little overview about who it is, what you do, and we'll get into today's discussion. Can't wait.
Absolutely. So I'm an estate planning attorney and I offer full services in estate planning. So I can do wills, trusts, powers of attorney for people. I do probate work in Maryland and I can do, more advanced things like business planning or high-end charitable planning if it works for the client. So I kind of try to pride myself on planning for try to find the sweet spot for the clients. Don't overplan, don't underplan for everybody's estate plan.
Got it. Well, we're grateful you're here again, and just want to ask, you're working with people just in the state of Maryland, or do you work with people elsewhere?
I'm only admitted in Maryland, so I only work with people in Maryland, but I do have some contacts outside of the state of Maryland. So if somebody's moving, say, to Florida or Texas or whatever, I may be able to say, oh, yeah, you can talk to somebody that I've met through my practice in, whatever state that happens to be.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being here. And what did you want to discuss with our listeners today?
Well, I thought maybe we talk a little bit about kind of the drama that's out there and with aging and how to, maybe avoid some of it. Sort of, this would be more not going into the nitty gritty of docs, but more like the motivating factor of why you should get in to see your attorney to do these things. I've been doing this for a long time, and you think that the behavior for human behavior has hit the basement, and somehow there's another level all the time. So it is just sort of like there's maybe ways that you can avoid all the drama.
All right. Tell us how. Save us.
Well, I think one of the important things to understand is that the biggest source of drama is your family dynamics. So, that's the face. If your kids don't,
I'm like,
yeah, exactly.
You're funny. Yeah, true.
I mean, if your kids don't get along now, don't think when you die or become aged, ill or older, that they're going to get along or they're going to do the right thing. It's important to recognize that if anything, it's probably going to get worse if your children don't get along. So it's sort of like, okay, what are we going to do to try to head off those dynamics and see what we can do? Particularly, maybe it's not your family, but we all know a family who there's one or two children that are either prone to shenanigans or scoundrels, right? And those are the people who are going to try, if you die or lose capacity, to wedge their way into things. And, maybe they are going to horribly steal mom and dad's money. And, there's legal recourse, but the phrase, you can't get blood from a turnip, it exists for a reason. So even if you could recover, has your money been spent on travel or gambling or drugs or whatever? You can't recover that. So it's important to think about this. And even if you don't have anything and the court appoints somebody, the court can only do so much. And if somebody's bound and determined to take your money, they take it, court finally realizes it, and the money is gone. Somebody took it again to Reno or Vegas and put all the money and lost all the money. So it's sort of think about, kind of the worst in human behavior and work forward.
Got it. Ooh, there's a lot of this. We have some good conversation about this, my goodness, because I've had my own fair share of my own family
Right,
in the
exactly.
situation. And you people that you think that you trust, but maybe you can't. So things should be documented. What should we be doing?
Well, I think the number one thing to reduce this is don't procrastinate. Like that's the number one evil. I mean, it's the number one evil of life, right? Whether it's this or losing weight or exercising or whatever. There's a whole host of problems, that we all procrastinate. And that the thing is, like, people will say, "Oh, I'll wait till I can do this. I got plenty of time. I can address this when I get older, whatever that looks like." And then all of a sudden you turn around and you're older and maybe you haven't addressed it or you have died. And then it, of course, is too late to address it. And the other thing to remember is about this number, the other way to avoid this is actually to plan. So don't procrastinate, plan. And then you're able to say, okay, I'm going to put these documents in place. I'm going to put my will in place. I'm going to put my power of attorney in place, my medical directive. And I'm going to select the kids or the child that I think is best suited to handle this, the most trustworthy, the one who has the most common sense, maybe is most business savvy, and I know will protect me. And so that goes a long way. I mean, you'd be surprised how much of this can be reduced by actually selecting thinking about thoughtfully about who should be in charge and appointing that person.
Mm, all right. And a lot of times, can you have two people? How does that work? Could you trust one? You put more than one person on?
I think it's not a good idea to put two people on, even if they're both equally trustworthy, because the problem you have, particularly in Maryland, is that anything you file in the court, both of them have to sign off on it. Now,
Ew.
yeah, exactly. And ooh may be we can't get them to agree, or ooh may simply be we've got to get them focused on this document and signed. And I know technology has made things like this a lot easier, but it's still trying to corral all the cats and make them focus on this. So that can be difficult. And if they don't agree, even if they're both trustworthy, then you've really created this horrible, position of we can't get anything done because I don't know, like Jill, if you are dealing with one of your siblings, and even though you're both trustworthy, or all three of you are trustworthy, if you can't agree on, let's say a realtor to list the property, you're not getting anything done. It's and so if you have one person, then they can make the decision, and hopefully they're making the wise choice. And what other thing people think about is that they say, oh well, a lot of times I hear, well, Jill's in charge, she's going to manipulate dad's will or mom's will so I don't get anything. Well, you're bound by the terms of the will. So Jill, you can't say I'm not going to give any money to my brother Steve because he's a ne'er-do-well or a scoundrel, or I don't like him, whatever goes into that equation. You're bound by the will. But if you're in charge, you get to make sure the bills are paid, maybe pick the realtor, that type of thing. But you don't have enough, you aren't given the power to override mom or dad's will.
Hmm. Interesting. Well, yeah, there's a lot of headaches with families but is if you really have your documents in order and is that really true? Everything's settled or no? There's still a whole process if someone does pass away. I mean, I have
Well,
so
there's
many
a whole
questions.
process. Oh, I'm sorry to mean to cut you off, but yes,
No.
there's a process like in Maryland, it's called probate. And that,
Probate, yes.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
so what really we're doing in probate is that the register wills, or the person who this is the official that runs it in Maryland, they're
Mm-hmm.
looking at a couple things. They're going to make sure that whoever was supposed to handle mom and dad's affairs is doing it under the will. So if it's Jill, they're going to review the will and say, yep, Jill's the person. And they give you documentation that you can show to the bank or to the realtor or the person who, the bills that you need to pay, that, yep, you're large and in charge. Second thing they're going to do is, and this is, nobody likes this, but they will, make sure the creditors are paid. So if mom or dad leaves an unpaid visa bill and it's a legit bill, they're going to make sure that's paid. They're also going to handle any disputes under the will. So if mom or dad said, oh, I'm not going to leave any money to Steve, and he could come in and say, well, wait, mom or dad was, they lack capacity. They were, unduly influenced by their child or whatever, so that they have this mechanism they're going to handle any disputes. And third, and the most important thing, or the thing that's most important to most people, is they're going to make sure that the money and property goes pursuant to the will. So they're going to protect it. So again, Jill, you wouldn't be able to say, well, I don't like my brother or my sister, I'm cutting them out. The register of wills would put a stop to that. So that's kind of the process, that how everything goes through. And then if they're also set up to handle just not only disputes on the will, but disputes about what maybe you did if you were in charge. Like if your brother says, oh, I don't like this. Well, you could go through and you could, basically take it through the probate process and argue it out over there. And, you'd be surprised what either people try to get away with or people want to argue. They would say, oh, well, I think, you know, sometimes, I mean, literally, I've heard this, that you shouldn't have spent this much money on the funeral. And, I'm like, well, I tell my client, if I'm representing the estate, I said, well, look, what are they going to do? They're going to take this in front of the judge and they're just going to say, really, you didn't think it was appropriate to spend X dollars of mom's money to bury mom or cremate mom or buy flowers or whatever it looks like.
There we go. By the way, if you are just tuning in, I want to remind everyone who we're speaking with and the work that you do. And you mentioned you've been doing this for quite some time. So, in estate planning, I know how many years have you been doing this? And just curious about your years, doing estate law. Just a
So,
little legal guidance for our people
so
here.
let's go with over 30.
Okay.
So it's been a long time. So I've seen a lot. I've seen the best and worst in people, I think. Although sometimes I think I haven't quite seen the worst, but I've seen a lot of different things happen over time. And hopefully, and then maybe I've made some mistakes, and hopefully I've learned from my mistakes and figured out how to, avoid those too, or help the clients avoid that.
Got it. Well, we're talking, we talked a lot about estate planning last time. I mean, it's your show. I'm not sure if you wanted to
I know,
discuss elder
absolutely
law, trust, business planning. There's a lot more services that you do, but
right. So I think one of the things I'd spin off a little bit toward elder law is that what we talked about, a little bit about what happens when you die, but the other side of it is what happens when you're alive and have lost capacity. And then maybe what happens if you are, you're actually working on mom or dad's behalf to pay their bills, right?
yeah,
You're doing this, you've stepped up to the plate, you said, I'm going to do this, I'm going to take care of mom or dad. And then the problem that happens is that don't expect that to be drama free, because invariably in every family there is one or more children who does nothing. They won't step up, they won't call mom, they won't pick up groceries, they won't take mom to the doctor, I don't know, whatever it is, right? And but at the time mom dies, they're right there to get all the money.
that's my brother. Sorry. His name's Anthony. Yes, yes. Okay, go ahead. Wow.
Harsh but true, maybe.
Yes,
But
definitely.
and then the other thing that usually coincides with that is I will say this, like I have never, when somebody has passed away, that the kids have come into my office and I've heard anybody say, I was the bad child. I didn't call mom enough. I didn't do anything for mom. I didn't do anything for dad, whatever. I don't deserve their money. Never heard that. And I think I will probably retire before I ever hear that. Or
Yeah.
but what usually happens, not only are they saying, when am I going to get my money, but then they usually are the people that are complaining that maybe I'm not getting enough. What did Jill do with mom or dad's money? And then they want to go back and revisit every dime that you spent on behalf of mom and dad. And part of the problem with that becomes is that people are very, to be kind, naive, to be cynical, obtuse, I guess is the way to put it, about the cost of care when you get in a nursing home. I looked this up this morning. In Maryland, the monthly cost of care in a nursing home is $12,500 on average, give or take. It's like $150,000 a year. Now,
Wow.
yeah, exactly. Wow. And for a lot of people, I mean, if you're super wealthy, it's still going to make a dent, maybe not as large a dent, but you can see that that's going to decrease people's wealth pretty quickly. But the people who haven't been involved will say, well, like Jill must have taken the money. Look, mom and dad had all this money. Where'd it go? And I'm like, well, went to the nursing home. Can figure this out? Mom was there for 2, 3 years. It's expensive. And so then they get, they make your life miserable because they're like, okay, well, she took all the money. She had a vacation in Vegas. You'd be surprised if your parents are elderly and you're taking care of them, how much your siblings know about your affairs. Oh, she went on vacation. Oh, she got a new car. And the source of this is always your parents' money, not something you made through your own sweat and tears, right? It's always she told mom's money to go to Vegas or Paris or whatever. And so it can be, a nightmare. And then, so a couple of things I think you can do to help reduce this is if you're acting for mom and dad, I mean, this sounds kind of Pollyanna, naive, I guess, is communicate with your siblings, right? Just send them an
Yeah.
email once a month and say, hey, mom's in the nursing home. It's costing, 12.5 a month or whatever. And these are the expenses she's had on top of that. So maybe they can at least claim they were aware if they opened the email. The second thing I think is important too is for the person who's acting in this role to keep their receipts, keep
Yep.
the receipts of meds, doctor's visits. Look, even if what you did was your only expenses were buying mom,
Yep.
McDonald's, keep all
Exactly.
those things.
But something. Yes.
Yeah, because then you don't have to, if you have them, then when they question you can say, well, here's all the receipts for the food or the doctor, or if mom's at her home, lawn care or whatever it looks like.
Oh my goodness. Well, amazing. We still have plenty more time to talk. So, in regards to elder care, though, also now, there's a lot to talk about this.
Right,
You mentioned, there's also, the conservatorship, the guardianship, there's elder fraud, and
right,
like obviously we're trying to tell people to do this stuff as soon as possible, right?
right.
Plan if but a lot of people don't. So I mean, could you share some examples of why we should be doing this earlier in life?
So yeah, because I think, one of the things that happens is that now when you're a bit younger, you have your faculties, you can properly evaluate hopefully who should be handling this. So you can say, okay, this is the kids who should be handling, because sometimes as you get older, again, people come out of the woodwork and maybe you pick, Tom to do this because your son Tom, who hasn't been around, all of a sudden realizes that mom or dad is failing, and now they're all of a sudden the helpful guy, right? They come in
Yeah.
and take out the trash and mow the lawn and do everything, and all of a sudden mom or dad's like, oh well, I'm going to appoint Tom, and all the rest of the kids are like, mom, what are you doing? He's a scoundrel or whatever. And so that, you maybe you lose the ability to evaluate people. Also, I've noticed that as people get older, it's not so much they lose their ability, but they get frightened. And
Yeah.
so, whoever's there is the savior at the time. And they'll select that person because they're also afraid, well, he or she's been helping me. If I don't select them, maybe they won't be around. So it's kind of that, not perfect storm, but it is, I guess, parade of horribles would be a way to put it. So that, and while you're younger, you have the ability to sort of say, to kind of say, all right, yeah, this doesn't, I realize that he's doing this, he's self-interested or whatever. And so that's, I think, an important thing. And if you don't do anything, you're basically subject to the court, to a guardianship in Maryland. So the court's going to appoint somebody that's going to handle your affairs, and the court's going to try to ferret out who the best person is, but they only know so much. They can only evaluate what's in front of them. And if, somebody comes in and acts like, you know, really polished that day, maybe they're appointed, and then, you're stuck with that, and it can be very cumbersome. And there's a lot with guardianships that you just don't want to go through. And they're also humiliating for the person who has to go for mom or dad. You're going to go in, you may be in the court, and you may be put on the witness stand, and you may, and the, be maybe asked questions. I did one time, and the I had to put the dad on the stand, and I said, "So, sir, where do you live?" And he said, "Oh, I live two places." And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean?" Because the wife had said, "Oh, we live, at 1313 Mockingbird Lane." And he goes, "Oh, well, I live here, 1313 Mockingbird Lane, but
Uh-huh.
the house moves at night." So he was saying, like, literally, he was having delusions that the house was, getting up and literally being picked up and moved 15 feet or whatever it was. And it really became heartbreaking because,
Yeah.
everybody, the wife, the children, they knew what dad was like before this. And, he's we're putting this on the witness, on the record. And, it is like, I'm representing the wife. She's crying. I look over, kids are crying in the courtroom, but I had to ask him questions because
Mm-hmm.
that's what we had to do. So it can be humiliating for the person going through it,
Wow.
you know.
Wow. And let me ask, people do this with their pets too, correct?
Oh
Do
yeah,
they?
absolutely. So yes, you can say, like you can say, all right, like I do it a couple ways. Some people just say, okay, I want to make sure that Marley goes to Jill because Jill, I know, will take care of my dog.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but sometimes people say I will leave Marley or my pets, or my dogs, whatever, plus a certain amount of money to Jill for their care and feeding. And then other people, like there is this idea of doing a pet trust in Maryland where you could, when you're talking, I guess, really large amounts of money for your pets, then you could put that in a trust, which would be there, for forever or for a very long time. But that would be for a very large amount of money.
Oh my
Most of
goodness.
my clients vacillate between, just giving the pets out or saying, okay, plus a certain sum of money for their care. Um, you know, but it's very important. Like your pets are very important. I come from a long line of dog lovers, and we make sure the dogs are taken care of.
Well,
Well,
who
take care of
was
your
that?
cats
Was that
too.
Leona Helmsley? Who left like everything to her
I
dog, like
believe it was
billions of
Leona Helmsley left,
dollars?
like, yeah, like it was some ridiculous, well, yeah, I'm going to say ridiculous, large amount. It was, a hugely large amount of money to her dogs, I think, or whatever her pets were. Yes. I haven't had anybody do that. I think the first time I did this, somebody left 50,000 for the care and feeding of their dogs. But this was a long time ago when 50,000 was like a really large amount of money. And I remember drafting it thinking, I'll quit my job and take care of
You're
those
like,
dogs.
what?
Exactly. you know. And the harder one for pets is not when you have dogs or cats, or fish, but where if you have larger animals, horses, a pot-bellied pig, whatever that because it's a little, dog, you can pretty much, a lot of people can take that, put it in their house, put it in their apartment. Horse, I'm probably not going to do so well in, a walk up in New York. So it's a little difficult. If you have the bigger the animal, the more challenging it becomes.
Mm-hmm. That is so true. All right. Well, this is, I love the work you're doing. You're helping so many people, and we've got 3 minutes left. So I just want to make sure we're covering everything that's important to you.
I think we've hit everything. I think
Everything,
we're good.
right? Yeah, we
Yeah,
did. We
we
did
nailed a lot.
well.
Yeah.
Great job. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, thank you for being here, for joining us again.
Thank
It's
you.
always a pleasure
Perfect.
having you.
It was awesome to talk to you as well.
And now tell us how we can reach out to you, please.
So you can get me through my website, which is www.jasestatelaw.com. And if you
Perfect.
reach out that way, it would be great.
Awesome. Sounds like a plan. Always a pleasure having you. And if someone does want to reach out to you, boy, oh boy, you have lots of experience. And it's always a good thing. If someone is out of state, would you also help them find someone in their state?
I would try to, if I, but I'd be honest, like if they say, well, I need somebody in Montana. I don't off the top of my head know if I have a
Got it.
contact in Montana, but call, I'll see what I can do.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic day and
You
looking forward
too.
to the next time we connect.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.